So welcome back. We will now begin the opening plenary session. My name is Catherine Chambers and I'm the moderator for the session. So we have three speakers who have all been involved with Arctic Council projects. So they're going to tell us about the different projects, and they're all on the topic of food and energy security in the Arctic. And I'll introduce each individual, and they'll tell us about their specific projects. And then we'll begin with questions from me, and then open it up for questions from the audience. So if you have questions, just keep those in mind. And I'd like to say again, thank you everyone for joining us in the room. It's so amazing to be here all together. And of course, everyone watching online, we're really happy that you could join us. And so with that, I'll introduce our first speaker. So Ms. Devlin Fernandes is the Executive Director of the Gwich'in Council International. She's calling in to us today from Yellowknife. And she will speak about the ARENA project. ARENA stands for Arctic Remote Energy Networks Academy. So Devlin, thank you so much for joining us. And please, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kat, and thank you to UARctic and to Iceland for inviting us to be a part of this. Gwich'in, Shalaknai, good day, my relatives, my friends, and colleagues. My name is Devlin, and I serve Gwich'in Council International, one of the permanent participants at the Arctic Council. And I'm joining you from Chief Dryhees Territory in the Acacho region, the traditional territory of the Yellowknives Dene First Nation. Let me, in the world of technology, I wish I was in the room with you. It looks like a great crowd and the opportunity to, not only listen to some presentations and speakers in person, but to share coffee and conversation with masks. But I'm here to talk to you today about the ARENA program. As Kat mentioned, the Arctic Remote Energy Networks Academy, ARENA from now on. So this program is a knowledge sharing program about isolated power systems integration designed for people living and working in Arctic communities. It is a project of the Arctic Council's Sustainable Development Working Group and one of a suite of activities that is advancing sustainable energy. It's really about promoting the responsible and sustainable management, use, and development of energy and resources, as well as innovative approaches to renewable energy in even the most remote Arctic communities. The first cohort met in 2017. The program was a big success, and they decided to run a second cohort for ARENA 2. It was approved in 2019, and it is led by a steering committee supported by Arctic states, permanent participant organizations, and partner organizations and governments. So there's always the question of why are we doing this? Why is this important? There are many drivers for this program, whether it is addressing high costs, the dependence on diesel in many Arctic communities, a lack of infrastructure, and a recognition that energy is connected to economies, housing, food security, health, and community independence and sovereignty. On the ground, there is a very personal connection to energy. There are concerns about costs and how much of your bill comes out, how much of your income goes to heating bills, concerns about reliability, safety, and conservation. But we also know that Arctic communities are at the forefront of energy innovations, and this high cost of imported fuel in the Arctic has created a setting where emerging energy technologies can more quickly become commercially viable. The experience of people and communities across the region has resulted in an understanding of what works, what doesn't, and what improvements are needed. And being able to share and learn from each other is what ARENA is all about. So the objectives of this program, first, is to build a cooperative international cohort of energy champions. We want to provide participants with the knowledge base, the skills, and collaboration networks to develop clean energy projects in their own communities and regions, to improve community energy resilience, to enable sustainability in Arctic energy development, and to achieve balance between economic viability, energy security, and environmental and public health concerns in the Arctic. Pictures are always my favorite. These are from the first cohort of the program and highlight the 4 key components of what ARENA is all about. We have visits to community energy projects in the north, and in this cohort, planning to go to Canada, Alaska, and Iceland. We have components of knowledge exchange and knowledge exchange and networking. We have mentorship to support individual projects, and we have class presentations and classroom trainings, covering topics such as community and Indigenous energy project development, management and ownership, capacity building and the roles of governments and utilities in building success, wind, solar, hydro, biomass, and energy storage technologies, and geothermal technologies in district heating. The 2020, pleased to introduce you to the 2020 cohort. You see up on the screen, the recruitment and the selection took place late 2019, early 2020. We were thrilled that over half of the final cohort identified as Indigenous. And unfortunately, this little COVID hiccup has postponed what we had hoped to be on-site community visits in 2020. They got postponed to 2021 and are now postponed to 2022. There have been some virtual engagement opportunities, but as you know, and from Hala's story earlier, it really is when you can have the in-person bonds that build the connections and the trust. And so we have decided to wait until it is safe to go into communities before we really host the in-person sessions. In terms of impacts, we talked about the why, we talked about what it's about, but what does this mean? At the individual level, we are hoping that each participant gains the knowledge, skills, and tools they need and develops a network that they can collaborate with over the long haul. At a community level, participants work on a specific tangible aspect of a real-world project of their choice, incorporating what they have learned from their mentors, colleagues, training, and site visits, so their community benefits. In the circumpolar, the interregional sharing of experiences, of energy systems, of challenges and opportunities helps us all move towards our goal of a shared energy future. And globally, the need to shift to a low-carbon energy solution is a global imperative. So integrating locally available renewable energy supplies with fossil fuel generating systems and microgrids can profoundly change the way we address our needs for electrical power, space conditioning, and transportation. So as we think about what we've learned over the first cohort and our experience through the second, we see that Arctic cooperation across multiple scales is both required for success, it is an enabler, and it's also an outcome. The more that we work together, the more that these networks will grow. And in this case, we have a steering committee made up of Iceland, the United States, Canada, Russia, Gwich'in Council International, and the Indigenous Peoples Secretariat, all working together, providing guidance to the delivery team on the ground. In terms of recruitment and selection, we learned it takes a lot of work to get the right people in the room, but that experience is worth it. And when you're looking for who to select for different programs, not everyone has knows about things or has the skills and abilities to fill out the application if they're already wearing a lot of hats in a community. And so we have to be really creative in how we design recruitment and selection processes to make sure that we get those right people. In terms of network building, again, I would quote Hala and say that bonds are formed and trust is built when you have people who are learning together and experiencing together. And the 2017 cohort are still connected on WhatsApp and email today. And so they pull on each other for projects in their communities. Investing in the ARENA program is also a pathway to sovereignty and empowerment and ensuring that communities are making the decisions about their own clean energy futures. We're moving forward, because we're running over time. UARctic has a thematic network on renewable energy, and there's much expertise to be tapped into and to collaborate with. There's an opportunity for research and development partnerships, given the innovations that are happening on the ground. I think there's a really interesting opportunity to make case studies for knowledge mobilization and education. And there is a role to amplify the innovations and lessons learned for policymakers. These networks that bring people together, either in person or virtually, can provide support, mentorship, peer connections, experiences, and learning, and really create these clean, reliable, and secure energy futures. So, hi, Masi Cho. Thank you. I'm wishing you a great rest of the Congress, and I look forward to the rest of the presentations on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devlin. So our next speaker is here in the room with us. I'd like to invite Dr. Bryndís Björnsdóttir up to the stage. She is a strategic expert at Matís here in Iceland, and she will be presenting on the Blue Bioeconomy project, which was Blue Bioeconomy in the Arctic region. So Bryndís, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Kat. And good day to you all. And thank you very much for inviting me, and congratulations on this event. The project that I want to present to you today is the Blue Bioeconomy in the Arctic region. And it's an Arctic Council SHWG project. And it falls under the priorities of Iceland's Arctic Council chairmanship. And the objective of the project is to look into the opportunities and challenges for the further development of the blue bioeconomy in the whole Arctic region. And we did this through performing a desktop study, which we concluded by the end of last year. And it was based on regional analysis. So we had experts from different regions of the Arctic perform local analysis, and that was the foundation of the work. And the work was concluded in a report, which we are expecting to be published by the Arctic Council as early as next week. And here you can see those that were mostly involved in this project. So we had region-appointed participants from Iceland and from Norway, from northern Canada, and from Alaska in the US. Those were the ones that were doing the regional analysis. And then we also had participants from the Faroe Islands and Greenland, and then also from the Inuit Circumpolar Council, the Arctic Monitoring and Assessment Program, and the International Arctic Science Committee. But before I go deeper into the project, I want to start to reflect on what is the blue bioeconomy. It's not an easy or simple concept, so I have a video that I'm going to play that tries to explain that.
The bioeconomy uses renewable bioresources and sustainable manufacturing methods. The blue bioeconomy utilizes aquatic bioresources from oceans, lakes, and rivers. It includes the development of products, processes, and services by sustainable use of aquatic biological resources. Areas targeted to develop the blue bioeconomy includes fishing, fish processing and aquaculture, biodiversity, ecosystem services, and utilization of new biomasses in biorefineries, producing valuable compounds for society. The blue bioeconomy ensures future food, feed, and nutrition security, transforms manufacturing processes, and grows new jobs and industries. It will reduce the environmental footprint by replacing non-renewable, harsher industrial processes with processes based on circular bioeconomy and biological principles. The advancement of the blue bioeconomy is needed to reduce our dependence on oil, address key environmental issues, and contribute to a foundation for sustainable living. It allows us to imagine a future where societies rely on renewable and sustainable resources to meet their need for food, healthcare, feed, and fertilizers.
Okay, so the blue bioeconomy is a broad concept. So for the project, we decided that we had to put a focus or narrow down our focus. And we primarily focused on sustainable and intelligent use of biological resources from the marine and aquatic environment. And by sustainable, then we mean we are balancing the economic growth, we're looking towards social inclusion and protecting the environment. And by intelligent, we mainly focus on improved utilization of the bioresources, that we are creating products of a higher value, and to implement innovative solutions. And we decided to focus on the most valuable and the most abundant biomasses, and also promising underutilized biomasses. And we had 2 workshops related to this project. One in the very beginning, where we had stakeholders help us to form the focuses and help us decide on the next steps to take. And one towards the end, where we already had a draft of the final report, and we got input on how we were trying to, because this was a regional analysis, we wanted to take a more pan-Arctic perspective and discussions on what we could implement or say about the blue bioeconomy in the whole Arctic. And so the core of the work and the final report is this regional blue bioeconomy. And like I said, we have input for Iceland and Norway and Northern Canada and Alaska. And for each region, we have these sections. That's marine fisheries, aquaculture, algal biomass, and freshwater fishing. And then for Iceland, Norway, and Northern Canada, we had the full analysis of going through the main opportunities and challenges and identifying success stories and best practices. And then we have a chapter on Inuit food security, food sovereignty, and the blue bioeconomy. And there is a section there on markets for marine ingredients. And since I don't have the time to go into the regional analysis individually, I decided just to give you this snapshot of the success stories and best practices that we identified and have included in the report. So they include examples such as the improvements that we made in the utilization of cod, the Biotap biorefinery in Norway, where marine businesses can come and develop their processes and scale up their processes, and the icy waters Arctic char aquaculture facilities in Canada. And as I mentioned, towards the end, we were trying to look at some pan-Arctic themes from the work. We had these local analysis, very regional, and quite unsurprisingly, one of the main results is, of course, there is no one Arctic blue bioeconomy. And the reasons are there are so diverse conditions within the Arctic, natural, economical, and social. We also have different levels of maturations of the blue bioeconomy and different focuses, and even different understandings of what is the blue bioeconomy. But there are definitely some opportunities for Arctic cooperation and mutual support to enhance further the blue bioeconomy. And I want to mention here 4 examples. Firstly, it's that we continue to work together and collaborate towards sustainability. The blue bioeconomy is, of course, based on sustainable development. And we, as an Arctic, need to continue on that pathway together. Secondly, we mentioned that we should look towards fostering Arctic knowledge transfer. So increase both knowledge and technological transfer within the Arctic and also from outside into the Arctic should greatly help with the development of the blue bioeconomy. And we need to find processes that can help us encourage this. Thirdly, we need to build education and increase the capacity for the Arctic to advance further the blue bioeconomy. Firstly, we need to map what is needed in selected regions, and then we need to follow through with developing the right educational material and capacity building. And lastly, we suggest that some form of a research and innovation network would be beneficial for the Arctic marine bioeconomy to help the companies, the businesses there, to innovate, develop products, market products, connect and market. So that was a short glimpse into the project that we completed, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Bryndís. So then we will move to our final speaker today, Dr. David Natcher. He is an associate professor and director of the Indigenous Land Management Institute at the University of Saskatchewan. I believe you are calling in from Saskatoon, if my Googling is correct. So great. And David will present to us today the Water, Energy, Food, Livelihood Nexus program. So David, thank you for joining us, and please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Kat, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this session, and it's nice to see Devlin and Bryndís today, who I've had the chance to work with. I'd also like to thank everyone who has taken time out of their weekend to listen to the presentations today, and I hope you find it time well spent. Today, I'd like to talk about a project that's underway and supported by the Sustainable Development Working Group, and the title is Sustainable Development in the Arctic, the Nexus Between Water, Energy, and Food Security. And you can see I'm representing today a host of collaborators, including Devlin there. So I just want to acknowledge the important contributions that they're making to this project, but I get to share it with you today. So I think my takeaway message in this short presentation is that we have to begin to think more critically about the connections or the nexus between food, energy, and water systems. And the relationship is inextricable. And if we're hoping to make achievements or advancements in the security of one sector, we have to be aware that there are spillover effects into other areas. For example, nations can grow more food to address food insecurity, but what implications might that have on energy demand or water systems? And too often, these systems are treated in isolation or silos, which ultimately has negative impacts on the communities who are dependent on these systems most directly. So this recognition is not terribly new, and it was certainly advanced through Agenda 2030. And out of the Sustainable Development Goals, you see these global calculations for WEF security indices globally. So these global indices for water, energy, and food security are based on the same indicators that are used through the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, if we want to calculate water security for nations, we consider the percentage of people using at least basic water. resources or renewable internal freshwater resources. So these are all the same indicators that are used in the Sustainable Development Goals. Similarly, energy security, how many people have access to electricity and how much energy is produced from renewable resources. Similarly, food resource, prevalence of undernourishment. And based on these indicators, calculations are made on national WEF security. As you can see in this table, the Arctic fares very well in WEF security. And Arctic nations represent 6 of the top 10 nations when it comes to water, energy, and food security, and almost 7 out of the 10 with the United States being just on the bubble. So as Arctic states, we're faring extremely well as in terms of our water, energy, and food security. However, these data are based on an aggregation of national data. And our concern is, as promising as these indices are, the data used is actually distorting the reality of Arctic regions, given the smaller populations, the lack of comparable data that can be used. So these national indices that suggest that Arctic states are 6 out of the top 10 nations globally for WEF security actually is a misrepresentation of what Arctic communities are experiencing in their ability to secure sustainable water, energy, and food systems. And in many ways, this was the motivation for the project that we've recently launched, in that we are very interested in disaggregating that national data and getting a better understanding of what Arctic conditions are actually like when it comes to water, energy, and food security. And from that more informed understanding, develop policies and interventions that could begin to address the insecurities that Arctic communities are experiencing. So what I thought I'd do in these next 2 slides is simply show some of the discrepancies using Canada as one example of the difference when we look at a national WEF security index and when we disaggregate those data for the northern regions. So again, Canada ranks 5th globally when it comes to water, energy, and food security. And we should be, as Canadians, we should be all very, very happy with those achievements and being able to provide for our citizens. But when we disaggregate those data and we look specifically at northern regions, a vastly different picture is presented, where northern Canada, including Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, has a global ranking of 91st out of 170 countries ranked. So dropping from 5th globally to 91st when we just think about northern Canada. And if you look at the territorial level, Yukon is ranked 81st, and that's the highest of all the territories, including Nunavut and Labrador. Northwest Territories, 90th, and Nunavut coming in 126th based on those 21 indicators for WEF, or water, energy, and food security. So where does that put us in the company of? Well, again, Canada as a whole is in the company of Iceland, Norway, Finland, Sweden, and that's wonderful. The Yukon is in the company of Gabon and the Ukraine. Northwest Territories is in the company of Sao Tome and Principe and Belarus, whereas Nunavut is ranked similar to Cambodia and Gambia. Okay, so while these global rankings and indices are really valuable, they tease apart these connections between water, energy, and food security. When we really drill down and we think more critically about the Arctic, we start seeing a very different picture emerge, and those very extreme rates of water, energy, and food security that communities are experiencing. So that realization was really the real motivation for the project that was endorsed by the Sustainable Development Working Group in 2020, that supported research that would look specifically at what water, energy, and food security looks like in Arctic regions, and begin to think more critically about the nexus interaction between these systems if we're going to reach more sustainable levels. So our efforts right now are being directed to developing this water, energy, food security index specifically for the Arctic, but also looking at regional, national, and ideally a pan-Arctic scale to be able to compare to other regions of the world. This also includes advancing what we think is going to be a novel approach to WEF Nexus research that explicitly includes Indigenous rights and livelihoods. So, for example, we can increase our energy production, say through wind production, which it would be an important accomplishment. But it can't happen at the expense of the livelihoods of Indigenous peoples, for example, herders who use those same territories. So including those rights and livelihood interests as a pillar within this WEF nexus is critical. We also feel that this can't be simply an academic investigation where tables and presentations are made. Tools have to be given to governments and communities to begin to tease apart these feedbacks and synergies between WEF systems to make informed decisions. So if you're interested as a community to adopt a containerized agricultural system to enhance your food production, is that going to be a burden on your diesel supply? Or is it going to be a burden on your energy resource or your water resources? So making those types of informed decisions through some type of decision support tool. And lastly, that we intend and are working cooperatively with the University of the Arctic to advance this thinking through education, research, and professional development to move beyond our siloed approach to training and education and begin to think more critically across these different sectors and disciplines. And the UARctic is positioned perfectly well to advance these types of discussions across disciplines, across thematic networks. So we're better placed to think about the real challenges and the opportunities around water, energy, and food security in the Arctic. So just some important acknowledgements, some funding, from Canada and Nordic councils, and special thanks to Sarah Cox and Anthony McDermott from Canada, who have been just invaluably supportive to all this work. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. So now we will move to a question and answer period. And I think I'd like to invite, Bryndís to come up with me on stage. And I'll ask you questions in the same order you presented to make things easy on the tech folks here. So Devlin, to begin with, I'd like to ask you, I know that ARENA was a flagship program for Iceland's Arctic Council chairmanship. And like you said, it was unfortunately delayed because of COVID. So it would be wonderful to hear from you just, what were you excited about specifically with Iceland? What was the project sort of really focusing on in terms of the Icelandic experience? Maybe you could tell us a bit more about that. So I'll give it over to you, Devlin.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kat. And I'll just say also thanks for the other presentations. It was really great to hear both about the Blue Bioeconomy and the Water, Energy, Food Nexus project. They're one of the biggest, components of ARENA is getting to see and getting into communities and getting into different places across the Arctic, so you can understand how different things work and how other people are dealing with the energy challenges and solutions. And in Iceland, we were continue to be so excited for the opportunity to learn about geothermal and how geothermal supports food security and the ability to use it to power greenhouses. And so, often solar energy is seen as a real win for the Arctic. And indeed, that is true in many months, but geothermal technologies have this great potential year round. And so we are really looking forward to learning from Iceland in the geothermal potential, and also how the remoteness of Iceland has not been a barrier to creating these innovative technologies and being able to really power the country and power the island in ways that I think much of the Arctic can learn from. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And then we'll move over to Bryndís. So Bryndís, I was thinking as I was watching your talk that there's a lot of, in Arctic conferences and in Arctic research, we always talk about, there's not one Arctic. Socially, environmentally, politically, everything. There is just a lot of diversity. And so I really appreciate seeing that, that you mentioned that in terms of the blue bioeconomy as well. So I was wondering, in terms of marketing products, that are made in the blue bioeconomy, what would your thought be on the view of the Arctic to potential buyers? Is there a sort of image of the Arctic that might be the Arctic, or how might that? Yeah.
No, I think absolutely. Marketing products from the blue bioeconomy in the Arctic as Arctic products is absolutely something that we should focus on, and is a strong selling point. And several companies within the Arctic blue bioeconomy already do this. You can, for example, buy Arctic collagen. So I think definitely that's something that we can absolutely focus on and do more of. I know some of the producers, they want to think even more local than the Arctic. They want to have it more regional, their marketing, which is fine. But I mean, in terms of selling something unique, something rare, something pure, and connecting that with the Arctic is there are huge potentials there.
Great, thank you very much. And then we'll move over to Dave. So Dave, I was really interested in, you're talking about this nexus of, food, water, and energy as something that we need to sort of consider as a whole. And when we sort of have this tendency, like you said, to kind of zoom in on one thing, and sometimes it's good to zoom back out. So it's really nice to learn about this project. And I was wondering if you could give us an example of, is there a local initiative that is sort of using this triangle, this, nexus, and something that you're maybe really excited about as an example?
Yeah, at the local level, I wish I could point to an example where, water, energy, and food systems were really being treated as this complex system. And, to really tackle the challenges, through an integrated approach. I can't, unfortunately. At least I'm not aware of that. I think it's really messy. It's really complicated, and it's challenging to think about the interaction of these water, energy, and food systems together with Indigenous livelihoods and rights. It's far easier to think about these as isolated systems. Okay, we're food insecure, so let's grow food in a greenhouse. Let's have more food shipped in from the south. And doing that, it's how we're trained academically. It's how government agencies work. It's where you get funding from, where are the institutions that interact with communities are so siloed in how they engage with communities. And I think it's really hard for not only, academics, but government agencies and communities to really think about the integration of these challenges and how to create policy that is, synergistic. How can we improve food security but become less dependent on diesel sources or whatever those challenges would be? So I think there are. The work that we're doing through SHWG, I don't want to say it's like completely novel. I think there's some really exciting things being done in Alaska, in some communities that are starting to chip away at this. But the goal of this SHWG project is to do that. Can we ground this in some communities where we really begin to think about how to move these systems along concurrently, where we're not dealing with trade-offs, but rather achieving WEF security concurrently. So that's probably not a great answer to your question. I wish I had some really exciting examples, but at this point, I haven't been able to find them. So.
Well, great, thank you. And I guess it just gives us ideas for the future research and future collaborations. So then I'll go another round with each of you, and I'd like to ask you the same question, so it's relatively easy in that way. So, we're all part of the University of the Arctic, and one of the very important basis of the Arctic, or of a university, are the students. And of course, we don't have, the ability to have the students in the room here with us, but we're really hoping that, students from all over the Arctic and so many of our institutions are tuning in today and following along on the conference. So I would like to ask each of you, just from your own sort of field of expertise. We have such a wide, variety of expertise, and then also the institutions that you're working with. So Indigenous leadership, R&D, and then academia. So it would be great to hear from each one of you just sort of, your idea of engagement with students and any advice or sort of message that you have for the students tuning in to the Congress. So Devlin, please, I'll start with you.
Great, thanks. Great question. So there's the question of students and the question of youth, and often we hear a lot that youth are the future leaders and the leaders of tomorrow, but I would argue that youth are already leaders in their own rights, and students are not only in training but bring their own body of experience and perspectives and wisdom to the table when they're engaging in this. I think that students can play a really important role in Arctic Council projects and programs, as well as within permanent participant organization institutions and other institutions, in terms of having opportunities to contribute to work, and whether that's through doing a master's thesis or a project, or doing a term semester, or even just interviewing and asking for a presentation to a grade 6 class or a grade 12 class, to learn about what are other things happening in the Arctic. Because if depending on where you're situated, it's nice to know that other people are in the same boat as you, or in the same area as you. So I guess I think students have the very important role to play. They can be sponges, they can be contributors, they are enablers in helping set directions and priorities. And they also bring energy and new questions and new ways of looking at things that I know that we really appreciate when we work with them.
Move over to Bryndís, your message for the students tuning in today.
Sure, thanks. First of all, Devlin, that was a great answer. I really agree with your message there. And just to add to that a bit, I think if you look into the blue bioeconomy, there are so many opportunities there for students, and so many interesting ways for them to collaborate and contribute to that. We are looking at natural resources, we're looking at economics, and we're looking at social dimensions. And there are so many, and within this we are developing a range of new products and processes. So I encourage students just to get involved. As Devlin said, you have your own voices. You are being represented. You're doing well in making yourself heard, I think, and just continue that. And I encourage you all to look into the blue bioeconomy in the Arctic.
Great. Thank you very much. And then we will move over to Dave for the similar question, same question. Your message for the students tuning in today.
Kat, you cut out, but hopefully you can hear me. I would just say, for students, at least the students I get to work with, is to stay curious. Ask questions and, be willing to step out of your, disciplinary confines. And that in the Arctic, that means engaging with communities and absorbing the knowledge that communities have and bringing your skills to answer important questions to them. And I think that's one of the challenges we have at universities is teaching students, graduate students, undergraduate students to just be curious, ask important questions and go find those answers, and whoever might have that knowledge to share, absorb it, like Devlin mentioned.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And so we have just about 10 minutes left for questions from the audience. So if you could give me just a little wave if you have any questions, and I'd ask that you could direct it to one of the three of our speakers, just to make it a bit easier on the technology change. So I'd open it up for questions from the room. Yes, please. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention we have a, yes.
Yeah, this is a very open and general question, but what do you three of you see as the main challenges that we're facing now that need to be overcome? Okay.
The main challenges, so I guess we'll go in the same order that we've been going the whole session. So I'll start with Devlin. What are the main challenges sort of moving forward, just in a very general sense from your view?
Right now it's COVID that we can't get into communities. Beyond that, I think finding just sustained energy, and I don't say that lightly, but to continue to keep the program going. I mean, if there's about a year's work of planning to have 15 to 20 people from across the Arctic come into it, and so it is really the recruiting the right people into it so that the experience for everyone is great.
Thank you. And Bryndís, your ideas on the main challenges moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we look post-COVID, I would say sustainable development. We have to work towards that. And to support and maintain all these Arctic communities. I would say those two.
Thank you. And Dave, your thoughts on main challenges from your perspective moving forward?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges that if it had to, drill down to one example is just trying to break away from these siloed approaches, the way we think about these systems. And I mentioned it during my presentation, and that's the way governments work in different departments and different agencies. It's the way universities function in the compartmentalization of how we think about people, water, energy, food, and finding ways to bridge that kind of a systems approach to addressing these really complex challenges.
Thank you. And we have another question.
Thank you. My name is Eyjólfur Guðmundsson, Rector of the University of Akureyri. I think my question is directed towards Devlin, but others can chime in if they want to. I noticed that in the project that you were working on, there were several instances of using solar power. And we are seeing more and more research that is saying that solar power can be used in the Arctic as a source for sustainable energy. Do we know today how big part of our future energy needs, sustainable needs, can be provided in the Arctic by solar? Is it going to be a supplementary source, a main source? Do we have any idea?
Kat, do you mind repeating the question? It's really hard to hear.
No problem. So your thoughts on the future of solar in the Arctic, can it be a sort of main contributor to energy? Will it always be supplemental? And what is the future of solar in the Arctic?
Right. Thanks for the question. And this is great because it lets me tell a little story about one of the kind of really amazing projects that has just been turned on. So in the community of Old Crow, located in the Arctic, at Gwich'in community, far north of the Arctic Circle, they just turned on their solar generators. And by turning their solar project on, they are able to turn their diesel generator off between, I think it's March and September. And so for the first summer in decades, they will have their diesel generators turned off. Now, is this going to be, is this going to be supplemental to their diesel? Well, they will always have their backup generators working, but the challenge now is to say, what are those storage systems? So if we know that we can get so much solar energy during the summer, how can we create the battery backups and the battery storage so that that can extend the period of time for which solar can provide energy for the community? And so I think it is as technology improves and as we ask different questions of technology and then look at different solutions, solar is a viable solution in the Arctic. Again, the next big challenge is how do we store that, and what are in particular in the community of Old Crow, the two innovations there are how can they sell their excess power back to the grid and back to the Yukon Hydro so that they benefit from their solar. And they are addressing this food energy question because when they built their solar project, and sorry, I was so excited when Dave got asked a question of examples, but when Old Crow looked at where they were going to put their solar installation, it was in the best berry picking area because they've been harnessing the energy of the sun for generations. And so the old ladies, the berry pickers, they said, well, no, you can't put it there. It's in where it's in where the best berries are. It's close to the community, but the engineers and the designers have said, well, this is actually the best for putting those panels in. And they worked out a solution. And so they have more space in between the solar panels so that the food needs and, the pickers who are not wanting to, and not from a safety reason and infrastructure, not needing to be super far from the community, can still have their prime berry picking reason. So in terms of solar, I think, yes, there are more and more innovations that are allowing it to become viable to support communities year round. Right now, summer, it can absolutely power at a community level, but we need to look at battery storage for more longer term.
Great, thank you very much, Devlin. And we have time for one more question I saw behind Eilbjörn.
No, it's actually just signal.
Oh, okay, one of these halfway, yep. Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes, Peter?
I know there are not only students listening, but also a lot of politicians, officials. If you had one wish not to Father Christmas, but to your Prime Minister or to your Parliament to make a new law, what would you, from your perspectives of your projects, what would you want them to do? Not give you $1 million of whatsoever money, but what type of law would you want to see during the next 5 years or so? What would enhance your project most?
Okay, so I think we'll go in the round then. Devlin, what would you like to request from your prime ministers and the people who are in charge of making regulations and giving out money?
Thanks for the question. I'll pick up on what Bryndís shared earlier in the diversity across the Arctic. And so, my request is, we have to look at flexibility and adaptability in the regulations and the policies and the funding opportunities that come out, because the circumstances in the Arctic are so different from those in the South. And in both of the regions where the Gwich'in communities are, in Alaska and in Canada, the majority of the countries for the United States and Canada, the populations are in the South. So often policies are designed for more urban, connected, and populated areas. And so when we look for solutions for the Arctic, really encouraging politicians to be thinking about the particular unique and diverse context within which those communities and projects exist, and having more flexibility to advance those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we'll move to Bryndís, your wish. Your wish.
My wish. Well, I agree with Devlin, and if I had a wish regarding the blue bioeconomy in the Arctic, I think I would wish for that the policymakers would really enable the establishment of a strong Arctic bioeconomy network, where we can work together on solving a lot of the issues that the companies are facing, fostering all this knowledge transfer and supporting the companies and for making a platform for us to work together, because I think in the coming years collaboration is going to be so important for us to tackle all the challenges, and as Halla said so brilliantly here earlier today, it's about forming connections and networks that's going to help us get there.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much. And then we'll move to Dave for your wish.
Yeah. I think I echo what Bryndís just mentioned. The collaboration, the coordination, and the governance of these energy and food systems. Using it as an opportunity as a platform for integration within government departments. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the management of water, energy, and food systems in the Arctic is just how they're so approached it in a siloed kind of way. And if we can get more integration within departments, government departments, and engagement with communities, I think some real advancements could be made.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for your questions, and then also for our panelists today for your insights. Before we give the panelists a round of applause, I would like to say a special thank you, and I think we should all give a big round of applause to the tech people here today. The last 2 hours we've been putting you through a very big workout, and we very much appreciate it. So a very big round of applause. And then again to our speakers, thank you so kindly for joining us today. And this concludes the opening plenary session of the UARctic Congress. Enjoy the rest of the Congress, and thank you for joining us.